Hey listeners, welcome back to the Dreadful Dialogue. I'm your host Alyse, and today we are going to be covering a movie called Barbarian. I have with me a new guest. Her name is Stephanie, and Stephanie is a friend of the podcast. If you checked out episode number 2 with Big Sexy, where he talked about his time as Scotty on Evil Dead the Musical, she's a mutual friend of Big Sexy and mine, and me and her have met up at Midsummer Scream, and we decided to get together on the pod and do an episode together. So we're going to be covering Barbarian, and Stephanie is not only she's done some acting herself, she's a makeup artist, she's a musician, she's done some karaoke, she's a karaoke DJ, and she is also one of the official hosts of Final Girlz, which is on YouTube, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about that. But I want to welcome Stephanie to the pod.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this with you.
I'm glad, yeah. So we're covering Barbarian, and
Heavy one.
Like any other episode, we're going to probably spoil this, of course. Well, we are. I mean, we spoil every movie that we talk about. So if you're listening to this and you have not seen Barbarian, go check it out. I don't even want to tell people what it's about. It's probably better if you don't know anything. And from what I understand from the research I've done, when they marketed the movie, they did a really good job of like hiding what the plot was going to be. Mm-hmm. And I definitely went into this movie not knowing much other than I didn't even really want to watch it. My husband was like, oh, let's put this movie on. We were just picking something random to stream. And I was like, whoa, that was crazy.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, tell me why you picked this movie.
I picked this movie because of the way it played on the fears of women. I also, I had actually never heard of the movie before until we watched it with Final Girlz. And we don't know what we're watching until we introduce the movie. And a lot of times we don't know anything about most of these movies.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about Final Girlz so that makes sense to them, like why you wouldn't know anything about the movie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we're a group of girls that didn't grow up watching horror movies because either we grew up extremely religious or we're scared of them, or like in my case, both.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of us we're just scared of watching them, and so we now react to horror movies together, and it's kind of nice watching them together versus trying to watch them by ourselves or things like that. And it's a fun environment, and we have no idea what we're watching until we introduce the movie. And yeah, so I had
so then they film it.
I'm sorry.
They film your reaction. So for people who want to watch it on YouTube, the viewers are watching the Final Girlz, and Final Girlz with a Z. Make sure I plug that. They're watching you ladies actually react to watching this horror movie for the very first time with no warning of what movie. Get that correct?
Yes. So yeah, it's our first time watching all these movies. So it was our first time watching the Halloween movies, the Friday the 13th, all the literally all of these, all the classics, and then we've thrown in some of the new ones, Barbarian being one of them. And definitely it's kind of like Cabin in the Woods. You don't want to know anything about it. So yeah, turn it off here and watch the movie if you haven't seen it yet. And come back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then please come back to the pod and listen to us talk about
it. Yeah. Because I tell everybody it's like Cabin in the Woods. You can't talk about it, otherwise it's going to ruin the whole movie with just a little bit of information.
Yeah, and that's a good one, by the way, listeners. If you haven't watched that one,
yeah,
that's one of my.
That one's fun.
Yeah, it really is fun. It's not nearly as scary as other ones. It's very entertaining.
No. Yeah, and I got to meet Bradley Whitford also at Monsterpalooza. That was fun.
Oh,
and
nice.
He was one of the guys in the and Cabin in the Woods that's like basically making everything happen.
Oh, like one of the engineer guys.
Yeah,
like watching on screen. But we won't say anymore because we're gonna ruin the movie.
yeah, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
now I know now I know which character. Okay. So you chose this movie because you said you watched it with the Final Girls,
Yeah.
and
And it
you
was a
wanted a
really difficult what, with some of the things that have happened to my that I've dealt with in my own past. It was a difficult one. And then we were basically shredded in our comments, being man haters and this and that and the next thing. And that's so far from the truth. It's just we're more cautious because of things that we've dealt with in our own personal lives. And we have to be.
absolutely.
We absolutely 100. And Tess pissed me off through the whole movie. I was just like, the whole time, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
There's
Why are you
a
doing
lot of moments
this?
like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this movie's full of red flags, and like
Yeah.
right from the beginning, the anxiety starts literally from the moment before the scene even opens. Like you hear the rain, and then
What the
they
one
show
that
you
what
the
got
rain and
me,
darkness.
and I noticed it, and it stood out even more to me than these last, because I watched the movie again a couple times before when after we had talking about the movie.
Yeah.
If you notice, while she's still sitting in the car before you actually hear the rain, you hear the screams of women.
I don't think I've caught that. No, I
Yeah.
haven't caught that.
In the
Okay,
very
you got me
beginning,
shook.
you just before you start hearing the rain, you hear multiple women screaming like in unison and just like different screams and like guttural noises, and it's just like it's haunting. It has like this really, really haunting effect to it. So you'll have to go back and check that out
Yeah,
before
it
it's like just before she turns off the car.
really. I don't think. Yeah, I think probably because the first time I definitely didn't catch it, and then when I rewatched it, like when you've kind of seen something before, you
Mhm.
don't pay as good of attention. You're like, okay, we got to get through all the little like production opening credit things.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I didn't catch that, so that
I
adds
caught
to the
it
eeriness
actually
for
when
sure.
the second time I started watching it, I was just like, what? Yeah.
So from the
'Cause
jump, like
I
you're
didn't even
already
think
like,
about it
oh
the
gosh,
first
this isn't
time.
going to be good. Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't waste any time. Rain, thunder, lightning, and Tess, the main character. Yeah, she's arriving
Yeah.
at this Airbnb. And have you ever stayed at an Airbnb or something of similar?
Yeah, actually, the last one I stayed in was a shipping container in the
Oh,
middle of nowhere with my
I
best
lived in one of
friend.
those when I was in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so we stayed in a shipping container in the middle of nowhere, about an hour outside of the Grand Canyon.
Uh-huh. But were you by yourself, and did you arrive at night?
No, I was with my best friend and we arrived in the daytime, and there was a porta potty. So we may or may not have actually used the shower because neither one of us had the courage to go out there at night to go try to go use it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Understandably. Again, yeah, that's taking me back to other memories of time in service that relate to this movie, and how you said your experiences affected your watching of this movie. The same with me,
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah. That was the first like big red flag. I'm like, why are you showing up at night? Like
Yeah, she
to a
showed up at
neighborhood you've
night.
never been to.
Yeah.
And
And you couldn't see anything around her because there was like maybe one street light in this neighborhood.
mhm.
So you didn't see anything. It was downpouring. So yeah, you already had the anxiety. And then when the key was missing, and at that point I would have been like, okay, let's just go. And then when she got back to her car and the light turns on in the inside the house, I would not have walked back up to that house.
No.
I was like, what is
No,
she
I don't think I
doing?
would have.
No.
I mean,
There's so many
and I
things
know
that
it's like
happened throughout that movie. I was like, there's so many times I would have been like, peace, I'm out.
yeah, yeah. This movie's full of moments like that. I mean, I know a lot of it is like it's like hindsight. Now that you look back, you're like, okay, I've seen it and I can think. But no, you were throughout the whole movie. This is the ultimate like horror movie where like you're like, nope, don't do that, don't do this. I wouldn't do this. The
Yeah.
whole time, the anxiety does not
And
let up until like 40 minutes in, and I'm not going to talk about when it finally lets up because we're not there yet. But
yeah.
yeah, and there's like no wrong answers here because she gets
No,
put in a situation at times where you're like, should she be doing that? Should she not be doing that? When Keith found the main
exactly.
character, Keith walks through the door. Should she have she hands him her phone, and
Yeah.
there was so many things. I'm like, what are you doing?
That I mean, just walking in there alone, I'm just like, I wouldn't have even done that. And see, and this is where we were eaten alive, is because everybody was like, you judged Keith too harsh. He did everything right. And one, you have the music is already, the music, the lighting, everything else. The they purposely made it so that it was more of an ominous setting
Mm-hmm.
already. And then he was a little off. I mean, it's an awkward situation. People are going to be awkward because, upon meeting each other. And I get that. And I understand that. But there is a lot of things that he also didn't do right. He wouldn't take no for an answer. He wouldn't, he didn't like were if they wouldn't he wouldn't a lot of times I feel as women we put our things aside, our fears aside and everything else for somebody else as not to look bad, because then we're like, oh well, they're just acting stupid, they're being over dramatic, da, da, da. And it's like, no, we have to be like this in order to protect ourselves.
Yeah, we have to be vigilant.
Yeah, absolutely. And people forget Ted Bundy was charming.
Exactly. He was charming. He was good looking. I mean, I didn't think he
Yes.
was that good looking, but to some women, he was good looking. Yeah. He
And
also gave me Norman Bates vibes. I don't know if you've seen Psycho.
yeah, I have not seen that yet, but I know it kind of.
Okay.
But he's also Pennywise. I mean, come on.
And he even says that. I know the director or the writer. He was the writer and the director. You know,
Yeah.
he did that line on purpose where he's like, "What am I, a monster?" She says something like, "What do you think I'm, a monster?" Or something. And I'm all, "Yeah, you're Pennywise.
Oh, you
I'm
are a
not coming in
monster.
this
No, I'm
house."
kidding.
Again, Tess obviously doesn't, know that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a movie, so
absolutely.
it's
And it's
but
like, and I don't think he was necessarily a bad guy, but to me, he came across as the nice guy.
mm-hmm, sure. And
um,
she's
and
using air quotes, even though we're not on video.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the listeners know. Yeah, he did
Um,
come off as like the nice guy, and you weren't sure, like, is he? Is he not? Like, is he being a gentleman? Like, that was what he was claiming. Like, when she finally
yeah,
agreed to stay, I'm not gonna let
and
you sleep on the
and the
couch.
fact that he completely dismissed everything that she tried to say, or any of her concerns that she tried to bring up, he kind of dismissed it.
Yeah, yeah. I hadn't even thought about how dismissive of the things that he was.
Especially
Was
about I mean, I know we're not quite there yet.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, the whole wine situation, I mean, just when she said I mean, she said she'd go ahead and leave. He was adamant about her staying. She said
mm-hmm.
that she would sleep on the couch. He was adamant about her sleeping in the bedroom. She said that she wanted everything she said she wanted to do, or that she was going to do. He was adamant that she didn't do it.
Yeah, he would counter her. That's right.
And to me, I'm like, and then when she ends up getting locked in the basement, and she finds the room and he lets her out and she's panicked, he blocks her from leaving. He completely
Yeah,
stands in front of her and tells her that she's overreacting.
yeah. And and all the other times I'm like, is he playing the long game? Like, dang, this guy, like, he really planned this out and he's got his lines ready. Like, oh, I made
Yeah,
sure to open the wine bottle in front of you. And that was the one time where I was like, you know what? Of course, we're getting a little ahead. He wasn't the bad guy technically. I mean, maybe he would have done something bad later. We have no clue
we
because
don't
he
know.
gets killed.
Well, he was
But
actually
that was the
written.
moment where I said, "Get out of there." He does not want you to leave. He is like, and then even when she goes looking for him, he's like, "Help, help, come get me!" And doing and it was like, and he's like, "We can't go that way to exit." And I'm like, "Girl, he's luring you in there. Get the heck out. Go, go, go!" Like,
Yeah, and that's
it,
how I felt
yeah,
too until Mother.
yeah. Until Mother shows up, yeah. Yeah, and again, there
um,
were so many red flags. Tess goes to her. She's there for
and
the
like I said,
interview. The
they
lady
were
tells her not to
torn.
stay in Broadmoor.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sorry, but soon as I walked out, okay, so I survived the first night, and I
Yeah, the guy
survived
didn't
my
turn out to
door
do
being
anything.
opened and all these other weird things, and him making noises in the living room. I
Mm-hmm.
survived this, and I got up the next morning, and I walk outside, and why is this the only house that's standing? I'm sorry. I would have on my way to before heading to the interview, I would have packed my shit back up and been like, I'm not coming
Out.
back. I
Yeah.
am
I
not
never
coming.
understood why she went back.
I mean, they had, I'm sure she could have, just written her phone number on that piece of paper if she wanted to talk to him again, that he had written her a note saying that he enjoyed the evening, hanging out with her, you know,
Yeah.
leave the phone
Yeah,
number
because there
and
was definitely vibes that they were that they started to get interested in each other, right? I mean,
yeah. Yeah. And at that point I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. All right. Okay. Our went down just a little bit, you know, but still, when I saw what the place looked like, and especially for him to even stay there knowing what the place looked like.
yeah. Granted, I know he was like in a group that like fixed up houses and stuff, but I don't care if you're a man, even a person in their right mind. You don't. Why would you go stay somewhere by yourself? And that's not to like shame a neighbor, like a neighborhood. I don't want to. I'm not trying to put down like people have to live where they have to live. Unfortunately,
Oh
everybody
yeah.
doesn't have the same financial status. I didn't grow up rich. I didn't grow up in a great neighborhood. I've lived in bad neighborhoods. I've hung out in bad neighborhoods, but I
Me
hang out
too.
in bad neighborhoods that I like know the area because it's like, well, I grew up in this city or I grew up in this
Mhm.
area versus like if I'm going traveling to another place, I'm not gonna I'm not straying off of the path
Thank you.
somewhere I don't know because I'm only
We don't
street
know.
smart in the streets that I know.
See, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
I've lived for years in areas that weren't super kosher, but I knew them and I knew the people in them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not to paint everybody in like a negative light, but yeah, she should, like you said, when she woke up and saw the neighborhood, she should have already thought to myself, as soon as my interview's over, I'm out. Like, there's no reason to go back to this house.
Yeah,
And
I
then when
would have
she
just
goes
had my
back,
stuff with me and just left at that point. And then,
yep,
especially when the interviewer was telling her, "Hey, you don't belong in that area." I would have been like, "Okay, this person obviously knows this place better than me.
exactly.
Let me not."
No, for real. Like when that, because I would have been like, that's if I have like, I've had friends that come to visit. We live in SoCal, so you get people who want to know different areas and stuff, and they'll ask me about certain area. I'm like, ooh, I don't recommend stay there. How about you stay closer to this area? Because you
Yeah,
know the area, and they listen to you because they trust
that you
your
know the
instincts and
area.
your knowledge of the area. And she should have listened to her. And then she
Yeah,
returned, and then when she got back,
when you
his name
had
was Andre.
Andre, yeah, when Andre was
Yeah,
chasing her down, and I would have freaked out at that point too. That
exactly.
would have freaked me
He
out
didn't do a
too.
very good job. Hey,
At
little
trying
girl,
to,
don't go in that house.
yeah, get out the
There was a
house,
way
get
better
out
way
the
to
house.
word
I'm
it
like,
for her.
ooh. Yeah,
Yeah, I was like,
yeah,
okay,
I
now I'm going back into the bad house because the scary guy's outside that's gonna get me. But he could have
exactly.
worded it much better, like,
Well,
girl,
I'm
it's
just
not
like, I'm like,
safe.
why did
You
he
don't
just run
know.
at her?
Mhm.
And that was my thing. I'm like, why are you gonna just run at her?
Yeah, and I'm sure they
Yeah.
did that on purpose because if he would
Oh,
have
they
warned her properly,
absolutely
then
did.
end the movie, right? We wouldn't have ever met
Exactly.
Mother.
Exactly. Well, it's so funny because I thought the movie was actually over at the point where we saw them, and I was like, was this a short movie? I was was this just a short
Yeah,
story? I was so confused when everything went black.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking the same thing too. I'm like, okay, is this? It was so confusing, and I read and if you ever like for listeners, if you ever watch a movie on Prime, you can click. It's really cool. They have this thing called X-ray. Like I don't know if you've seen it,
Oh
Stephanie, where
yeah.
you can click it and it gives you more info about the movie.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah,
said that
I think
the
that's
guy who
cool
wrote,
because I watched
yeah,
it
right.
on
It's like
Prime.
IMDb, same thing where you can go and get extra information. He said that Zach Krager, the guy who wrote and directed it, that he had read a book called The Gift of Fear, and we also this was also in that interview you sent me, the
Yeah.
Collider interview, that for our pre because we always do pre research for our podcast. That he'd read a book about women trusting their intuition, and I'm reading this quote. I'm quoting this from
Okay.
X-Ray. It says that he read a book which encourages women to trust their intuition when confronted by obviously dangerous men. He used it as a writing exercise and began crafting a 30-minute short that consisted entirely of a conversation which a woman continues to ignore a mounting series of red flags. He
Hmm.
liked it well enough that he thought it could turn into a bigger story. And that's what he thought it was going to end. And then he
Yeah.
was like, and then a naked lady comes out and attacks the guy.
Yeah, yeah, because
So then he took
I
it
think it was
further
one of
from that.
those where he thought it would be too easy to make Keith the killer.
Yeah, I think you're right because
Hmm.
it was so obvious so that when it turns out Keith isn't the killer and he's not the barbarian or the bad guy.
Yeah.
It was a good way to throw us off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So would you have followed? Would you have followed like first looking for the toilet paper after she got it? There was
I
no
wouldn't,
reason to go any further.
no, no. And I'm scared of basements already. So,
Yeah.
no.
And then
There
she
was,
follows Keith back. I'm like, why did she
and
go
then my
back
thing is
in?
too is what led her to actually pull that rope. I wouldn't have even thought about pulling that on that rope to open up the door, that secret door.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
have seen a rope
I
there
don't
and I
know.
wouldn't have even thought about it. I would have been like, there's just something else sitting on this, and I'm in this creepy basement and there's just creepy things in here. Let's just work on
Yeah.
getting out of here.
I'd have been more focused on just getting out of there.
Hmm.
Because I think at that point that's when she's actually trapped, right? When she finds the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the door closes behind her when she's in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm been like, no.
there's a whole so many red flags.
Yeah, but that room would have freaked me out too. I mean, it was literally a jacked up mattress, a
Really
camcorder, and
good.
a
Yeah.
bucket, and a bloody handprint on the wall. No.
Nope.
Soon as Keith would have
And
been
she
like, I'm
says
going,
nope. Yeah.
and soon as he went down there, I would have been like, have fun with that. I'm out. I already warned you about it. I warned you about it. I told you not to go down there. You can prop the door open with something else. I'm not going. I would not have gone back down there. Been like,
No. I would have left. I'd have been like, I'll call for help. I'm out, homie. Like you're gonna have to figure
oh,
this
and the
out all on your
cops,
own. Like, yeah.
the cops.
Which we find out later the cops would have probably been helpful.
Oh no, the cops were terrible.
Yeah. So what was your reaction when you first saw Mother?
I didn't even know. It took me by surprise. I was just like, it was a complete jump scare. I was just like, what in the world? Because I was convinced he was luring her down there
Uh-huh. You
because
thought they
of
were like in
how
cahoots together?
I didn't. Well, obviously, when she started, she pretty much kind of bashed his head in almost immediately. It didn't take her very long, and because we come to find out that I think she was. I wonder if she almost. I almost wonder if she thought that he was going to hurt Tess because of the scuffle.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that before because we find out, how mistreated she is by the only man in her life that yeah,
Hmm.
maybe I mean, I thought that about AJ's character
AJ.
that she was distrusting of him, but I hadn't even thought about that with like why she immediately killed Keith. That totally
Yeah,
makes sense though.
because they found each other and they start all of a sudden it was just like it was they started bumping heads like she's just like what's happening, let's go, and he's arguing with her and yelling at her, and I almost think Mother got triggered by the yelling.
It could be you brought up a really good point. I think you're right. That's a really good theory that it totally makes sense as to why she would immediately kill him because she immediately is very protective of
Oh,
Tess's
she was
character.
very protective over Tess,
Yeah.
and it's like you could tell she'd never wanted to hurt Tess even
Yeah, I mean, she saves
from
her
the
at the
get-go.
end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when I
Yeah.
first saw her, I was like, "What the heck is going on?" And then, yeah, like you said, it happened so quick. But like you said with Keith, I thought I definitely had totally lost trust in him. I thought, yep, he's luring her down there. Um, but I didn't know what to think about Mother. I was just like, okay, and then it just like it
And then
ends.
you get
Like,
it's black. And then it
yeah,
ends and all of a sudden and I was like, is that it? Is it over? And then when I heard the music start up again, I was like, what's happening now?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's
We
when
went
it
from
cuts into
this grim
AJ.
scene. Yeah, then we meet AJ Justin Long, played by Justin Long, and
Yeah, and it's all bright and sunny, and he's singing and this upbeat song in his red car, and then
yeah, yeah.
he gets his phone
hanging out
call.
on PCH in his sports car. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he gets the phone call because we find out he's an actor that just and that he alle- air quotes again allegedly
Yeah, air quotes again,
raped
exactly.
a a co-star. And at first, I was giving him the benefit, and it's so funny. I think because of how we felt about Keith, we actually gave AJ the benefit of the doubt that maybe he was being falsely accused. Because, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of it was because of how they brought him in with the bright color scheme, the happy music, and
hmm
you know, he was an upbeat guy. And so I honestly was like, okay, well, I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt, and maybe he's just landed on some hard times and he's being falsely accused.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if
I,
he's falsely accused, then that sucks, you know?
yeah, exactly. And I was kind of the same way. I was kind of like, okay, well, let's find out more about this. But
Let's
then
find
I
out more about
like
this
the
guy.
doubt just keeps creeping in though that
Yeah,
he
especially
isn't
when he starts
innocent.
calling her a bitch and this and that. He's like, the fucking bitch and da 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 da.
Yeah. Like what
Yeah, and
I've
then
never been accused of something so bad, but if I was innocent, I would be more like, "Oh my god, like really that's what that person." I would be
what
more
can I
freaked
do
out
to
like, "I
what
can't
can I
believe that
do to
person said that." Like, I don't know if I'd go right
yeah,
to calling her a bitch.
yeah, see,
Even
and
if
I
you
probably would have been
genuinely
the
felt that
same
way.
way. I've been like, why do they think this? Why would they,
And he's kind of
why would they
dismissive
think
of
that?
the female on the phone, right? Like the guy's the one like kind of like reeling him in like it felt like he's talking to him like man to man and the lady's like, "No, like I have
Yeah.
to tell you this basically." She's more matter of factly and he
Well, yeah,
seems
and
like
she
he
even
doesn't
told
want
him,
to deal
be
with her.
careful what you say while you're on this phone call.
Yeah.
She even kind
Never
of
know.
warned him.
Yeah. And then
And
oh go ahead, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
then the accountant drops him
Mhm.
and he comes back to this house, and then when he meets up with his and then he meets up with his buddy, or he's talking to his mom, and that's when he that bitch, that bitch, that bitch, she ruined my career.
Yeah. He
Forget
was
what he did.
dismissive. He was really rude to his own mother.
Yeah, and so I was like, let's see. I was still, but I was still like, we'll see. But when he was talking to his friend, and he was like, yeah, well, we had sex. Well, did she consent to it? Well, she needed some convincing. That's when I was like, he's a
Nope.
jerk. This guy's an
Yep,
asshole.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. All those other things, the way he was talking to the Airbnb lady, the way he talked to the
Yeah,
initial phone call, even to the accountant, he's oh, I'm gonna win the defamation case. The defamation case. Like he was calling her a bitch the whole time. It was just like and then the mom, like I said, and even how the mom was saying, "Oh, well, dad wants to see you." He's like, "Dad said that," and she's like, "Well, you know, dad." And it's like, "Oh, even your own dad isn't trying to defend you." Like your
right.
dad don't want nothing to do with you after because they said an article came out, so these allegations were out there for the world to read.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then when he says that at the club or the bar or wherever he is with his friend, he's like, "Yeah, she just needed some convincing," and he says it like that. I was
Yeah,
like,
soon as those words came out of his mouth,
"Wow."
I was like, okay, he did it.
Yeah, that's why I
He
was like, "Nope,
100% did it.
this guy's a scumbag. He totally did it." Yeah, I at that point
Yeah.
I was like, "Yep." That was when I was sold that he had done it. When he said that, it was like I was already just inching closer to that point where I
Mhm.
definitely knew he did it, and I was like, "That's it. He's done it." And then even when he gets to the house and he's acting
Yeah.
like a tough guy when he thinks somebody's in the basement. I'm a fucking
I
man. I'm gonna fuck you up. And yeah, there's gonna be a lot of foul language in this episode. But I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Although I
I've just
will
never
admit, I
hyped
will
somebody up.
admit, I did find it humorous, watching
Mm-hmm.
him go through the place with the tape measure. But but watching his reaction to the room versus Tess's shows how differently men and women
Yeah,
look at these things.
yeah. We saw that. You saw the
It,
mattress in the camera, and we knew what was going on down there. He didn't care. He didn't.
he didn't pick up on it until he actually saw a physical tape about it, a tape
Mm-hmm.
when he met Frank.
And then he was like, oh, when he was only like slightly grossed out when he kind of sat on the mattress. He was like, you, and then he was like super grossed out when he saw the video the
Oh,
breastfeeding
yeah, it's
video.
the gas station redhead.
Hmm.
Yeah, because he had all these tapes, and they were all marked with the different women.
Yeah.
Some of them, hey, there
Did
was a
you?
Stephanie on there.
I
I
was
didn't like
just
that.
gonna ask you that. Did you see your name was on one of those? That had to have freaked you out. Did you catch that the
It
first time you
did.
watched it?
It did. I'm like,
Wow.
oh no, I don't like that he has a Stephanie. And then also, what was funny too is I used to work at a gas station, and when I worked at a gas station, I was a redhead.
Oh wow.
So he had a
So it was like,
Stephanie at a gas station redhead. I'm like, oh God, I was both.
yeah, that's yeah. Thankfully, I don't have a very common name, so my name there was I didn't. I haven't gone back to reread the titles, but they were pretty. It was pretty sad to see how many videos that
Oh, there's so
Frank
many.
had, and let's talk about Frank
And
actually.
and then when we go back to Frank's story, his
Hmm.
timeline, and then you
Yeah,
find out why the people are leaving Detroit is because it was becoming more diverse,
yeah, yeah. It's inferred.
which
It's
is
not
sad.
spelled out, but it's inferred. And Frank's like,
Yeah,
cool, whatever. I don't need eyes on me anyway. So he doesn't need to
exactly.
draw
He
attention
had
to
no
himself. He's gonna stay there.
exactly, but when he with the way he watched that woman when he was leaving after buying the baby things, and he sees the
Products.
woman putting the stuff in her trunk in the blue car, and he follows her, and I'm just like, how often can we be that I wouldn't have noticed somebody from across the lot watching me get into my car
No,
and possibly following me back. And how terrifying is that? And
super terrifying.
and then I was thinking too, I'm like, oh, this is also the day when people didn't lock their doors and stuff, because she just let him in like nothing. Instead,
Yeah.
I
No
would have called the
ID.
nothing. I would have called the water company and been like, did you send this guy out here?
Yeah.
And he literally walked in the bathroom, turned on the water, unlocked the window, and walked out.
Yeah. And he knew to turn the water on, so it seemed like he was checking the water and to hide the noise of opening the window. Like this guy was a pro.
Yeah.
When it didn't even make it hard. I mean, granted, this is before like now we have so many like things in place to help us. Like people have Ring cameras and
Hmm.
cameras around their home, and we're more which is sad because we've had to become more vigilant as a
Yeah.
society, but it makes it harder for you to get to know people who live near you. But yeah, I mean, it was just the level of trust that she had for somebody just showing up at her door in a jumpsuit. Like, oh yeah, he works
Yeah.
for the
And if you
water
notice when she
company.
showed
Cool, come
when
in.
he left, she didn't even lock the door when he left.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah,
Wow.
she shut the door and walked away from it. She didn't lock it.
Yeah.
That's why I was
And
like, it was the time when
that
people
whole
didn't lock
sequence
their
was
doors.
odd. Yeah.
Oh, it was really odd.
It was.
It was so yeah.
Yeah.
And
Especially the way
it's
it starts out, because again it jumps to you're like, wait a minute, why does the house look so clean, why is it, and you realize they start talking about the Reagan administration, like, okay, we're in a different timeline right now. And then when I saw
exactly.
the
I will
guy who
say one
plays,
thing, I like that way the movie did this though, because I hate having movies where I'm asking a bunch of questions later. Every single one of my questions were answered
really I
in
had a
this
few but
movie.
not enough to stress
Well,
like
I mean,
no
it was
movie's
enough
gonna be plot
of okay,
holeless.
I understand who this person is and why they're here and what they're doing, what happened to them. I understand this person in the it was one of those
Yeah, that
where
totally makes sense.
basically all the storylines you see where they come together and why it was important to have this little backstory or this little thing happening.
Yeah, this
And
flashback.
I thought it was really I also felt it made the movie interesting to watch too, because you didn't know.
Yeah, it was
But
almost like a play, and then I found out later that again the director kind of did that. He kind of treated it like three acts.
yeah.
And I was calling them segments, I think, in my notes. And then later I do the research. I'm like, okay, so I was catching on to
Yeah,
what he
I
was
actually thought
doing.
it was pretty brilliant the way he put them together like that. I liked
Yeah.
it. But yeah, but Frank was obviously the main barbarian.
You think so? Yeah. There's multiple barbarians in here. And I think at the end we'll really
Yeah,
hit all of them. But he's definitely the original barbarian in this movie.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, he
I
was
didn't
a
trust him from the
monster.
beginning because it's Richard Brake, and I don't know if you've ever seen him in other horror movies. He's in like a lot of Rob Zombie movies,
No.
and I was like, oh no, this isn't gonna be good. This guy's not a good. He always plays a
Mm-mm.
bad
I
guy,
haven't
so I was
seen
like,
him.
oh no. I'm
But
sure. Yeah, I know. I think like I
but
know.
he was off-putting even when as soon as he walked in looking for the baby stuff.
Mhm. He
I
has
was
that
just like,
scowl on
I
his
don't know.
face.
Yeah, he was very stoic, very just, I don't know, just there's just he had that inner, just something about his energy was so off. Where you're
Hmm.
just like, mm. And he
Yeah.
was, and like I said, the way he followed that woman, I was just like, this is chilling. It chilled me. I was just, it's terrifying. And see, horror movies like this, I mean, I have a hard time with like paranormal normally, but these type of things, there's people out there actually like this.
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes this so scary is we never know, you know, what's around us, really.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It just adds to your we're aware of things around us, and this just like it just adds to it now when you do go out in public. I'm sure you once in a while you think back to that movie. I mean, you already have it in the back of your head that you have to be aware of your
Yeah.
surroundings and what situations you put yourself in. But this movie just, like I said, the anxiety doesn't ever really break, other than for me it only
Yeah.
broke during those few minutes when AJ, we don't know he's a bad guy yet, and he's cruising in his car, and we meet
Mm-hmm.
Frank, and he's not a good guy, and we find out what he's doing. And then after the whole vignette with Frank, we go back to Tess and AJ in the basement, and again, the anxiety it
Yeah.
never lets up.
Yeah.
So
It's tough. But yeah,
yeah,
AJ.
so
AJ.
did you buy into what happens, right? AJ finds Tess down at the bottom. He finds Mother in the basement.
Mhm.
He's
Oh,
essentially forced to stay down there.
and then the way he looked grossed out about the breastfeeding. I'm like almost wondered, was he just as grossed out about the breastfeeding as he was watching the murder tapes?
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's what he's such a hypocrite. He doesn't realize that he is just as bad of a man
He's just as
as Frank
bad.
is.
And
He just hasn't done
he's in
anything to that
denial.
level yet. Yeah,
Oh,
that
until he
he
drove
could be
until
something.
the water tower.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. But and that's what, and I think that's where I got mad watching the movie when you think he's making his whole redeeming speech, like, oh, maybe like he kind of, because he accidentally shoots Tess, right? Which why she
Hmm.
went back to go save him. I would, after I got out of the house, I'd have been like, I went back for Keith and it didn't work out. I'm not going back for AJ,
I wouldn't
especially
have
she
gone
doesn't
back.
know he's a bad
And
guy,
then
but
why did
she didn't
she
need to go
run her
back.
car into the mother and into the house? Why didn't she just drive off? At that point,
Right?
I was just like, girl, what are you doing? This whole movie,
Yeah.
the whole, I was so angry with her. She was just like, I want to know how she lived up to that point.
I don't know. I mean, she was very smart. She figured out right away how to keep, as she told AJ, you got to keep her happy. She just wants you to be your baby. She figured out real quick, like, you got to breastfeed off of
Well,
her, drink
yeah,
off of the bottle. You got to let her hold you, because otherwise she gonna get angry. And when she gets angry, good things don't happen.
exactly.
Smart, but
You get
I
your
don't know
head
if I would
bashed
have made
in.
it. Yeah, I would have left. Once I got out of
Yeah,
there, I wouldn't have gone back for
I
AJ.
wouldn't have gone back.
I'd have gotten to another, even though the police didn't trust her, I'd have left the area somehow and called the police, and I'd have kept
Yeah.
bugging the police until somebody went like, you guys got to go save this guy, but I'm not going back.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
I would have actually gone to other. Well, she was in journalism. I would have written a thing on it.
Yeah, that would have been a
I
good way. Yeah,
I would have
to go
left,
on with it.
wrote a whole piece about this house,
Yeah.
and
So,
done something. Done put out awareness. Have them have find a way to have this house checked out and looked at
yeah.
and completely investigated. But I would not have put. They even say even when you're in an airplane, what do they tell you when the stuff comes down?
Hmm.
Put your mask on yourself first before helping somebody else.
Yeah. And
And
she
even
needed to
and I
get
was also a
herself out of there.
I was also a first responder at one of my jobs, and they always make
Hmm.
they always they tell you make sure you get yourself out of, make sure that you're not putting yourself into danger to help somebody else.
Yeah. That's a really smart way to think about it.
So
Yeah, you got to
it's one
save
of those
yourself
things
so
where
you
you
can
have
save
to get
others.
yourself out of danger and then, go about trying to help them from from there. You can't just, it's like you have somebody laying in a pool of water and there's a downed electric line next to them. So are you going to go try to help them and electrocute yourself too?
Yeah, if you don't know you don't know the proper protocols to handle that sort of thing, bring in the experts.
Exactly, exactly. And that's kind of how I felt with her chasing Keith and AJ back down into these catacombs underneath this house.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm sorry, I would not have done it.
Yeah,
I would have
no,
been
and there's
like, you
no
know
wrong
what?
answer. Yeah, if other people
Mm-mm.
say they will, I'm not mad at them, but I'm not doing it. There's I think I
You're
mentioned that in
braver
like our
than I
previous stuff.
am.
There's no right or wrong here. I mean, yeah, exactly. You're braver than me. Like after spending, they insinuate she's been down there for weeks with mother. After a few weeks, like I'm sorry, I can't do it. Like I'm not going back. And
Mm-mm.
like you said, I would not have
No,
crashed my car. I'd have gotten in my car and left,
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 left.
left.
And then I thought
And
it was
Andre
crazy too
told her not
because,
to go back.
and I remember she's like, I know a safe spot when she went to the water tower. I think mother knew that he had been staying there for the last 15 years, but she didn't think of him as a threat. But when
Mm-hmm.
she lost her baby,
Yeah,
she went looking for her at the water tower.
yeah. I didn't see that coming either when because he was like, "Oh, I've lived here
Oh no. He's like, I've been
15
staying
years."
here for 15 years and she's never been here. Boom. And then
Boom.
she straight up tears off his arm and beats him, bludgeons him with it.
Yeah. And again, AJ gave, and then that's when, and right before that happened, AJ gives this like, and I was getting mad when I was watching it because he gives this speech like, I'm like, are they really going to redeem him? Like, oh, he's going to be the turnaround guy. And all of a sudden he knows the errors of his ways because he saw how sick Frank was and he's realized what he
Oh
did.
yeah.
And I wrote down what he said. I hope you don't mind if I read what he said.
No, please.
So he says,
You
I
can
don't
go ahead
know
and
if I'm
write
a
it.
bad person, but I might be a
Oh,
bad person, or maybe I'm a good person who just did a bad thing. I can't change what I've done. I can just try and fix it, and that's what I'm gonna fix. And he didn't fix it because you
mm-mm.
said what
Oh
he did.
no.
He throws her off the tower.
Well, yeah, because he throws her off the tower to save himself from mother. Because he
Exactly.
knew that mother had an affinity for her.
Yeah. I wouldn't even thought to do that. What quick diabolical thinking of him.
Right?
Oh,
And
and
it just
he
showed,
knew what he was doing because he had time to say, and go get your baby. I was like, oh, what a jerk.
yeah. Yeah. And then I will say, as far as like, and I don't want to call mother a monster,
No.
um, but I was actually really, really heartbroken at the very end when she had to pull the trigger on mother. I mean, when I watched it again today, I had to, I had it playing in the background at my job,
I hope your job
and
doesn't listen to this.
that's okay. I'm not only going to be there for a couple more weeks,
Awesome.
and and when I was listening to it, or when that part came on again, and she goes baby and boops her on the nose,
Mm-hmm.
kisses her fingers, and you know, I had to like hold, I got emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm like, this is like it, I feel like Tess was the only thing that gave her what she thought was probably love.
Yeah. I agree.
And
I
I
don't, she's
think
not the barbarian.
no, oh, absolutely not.
She's a
It was,
product of her environment.
and
And it's
that's
not
what
to say
Andre
that she
even
didn't do
said.
bad things, but she,
But
she
she also
wasn't
didn't know
diabolical
any
like those,
better.
like Frank and AJ.
No, no. And she was like you said, the product of her circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I feel that she got triggered when Keith and her were arguing, when Keith was panicking trying to Tess, and
Get
they
out
were
of there.
arguing, and I think when he started raising his voice to her, I think she saw, oh, this is another female. and he's going to hurt her. I'm going to hurt him before he hurts her.
Yeah.
And
She brought a whole nother level with that.
I kind of feel, and I didn't catch this until watching this, these
Hmm.
last couple, because I watched it twice this week.
Oh, nice.
So these were just like the little things that I started catching. I was like, I think Mother was triggered.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she put such quick end to Keith,
Hmm.
was to try to save Tess from, because
Yeah.
who knows what a yelling argument went to. I mean, and how many other women did she watch get brutalized?
And she was scared of Frank because I don't know if you catch the scene when AJ's like down there going down the hall, and she when AJ starts to like go towards Frank's room, she like turns and goes the other way, like
She's like,
she
nah,
knows
thanks,
like,
I'm
oh,
good.
I'm not going, oh, I'm not dealing with, I don't know what she would refer to him as or whatever, but she's like, okay, I'm gonna stay away from that bad man. So despite
Hmm.
how tough, quote unquote, she is in all this, like, I don't think she'd really done violent things before this. I don't get the vibe that she
Mm-mm.
did.
No, I don't think
And
so
I felt the
either.
same way. I
But
felt really bad for her. I understood why Tess did it because she even says, I'm sorry. I can't go
yeah,
back because she knows that she's going to take her back, but you still kind of you feel bad for her that that's
yeah.
how
And I
it had
think,
to end for
and I
her.
also think I also think it may have also been an empathetic thing too, because she's kind of putting her out of her misery.
Yeah, you read my mind exactly. A mercy kill.
Yeah, because the Mother would have never been happy. Mother is she suffered all of her life, like I said, and we don't know how many women she watched Frank brutalize and hurt, and murder, and he was doing awful things. And then
Yeah.
and then he had multiple babies, and they because they
Hmm.
talked about the inbreeding.
Yeah, Andre
So
the
when you
man
saw all
explained
the
all that.
cages and stuff down there, I'm almost wondering, were there more children that he may have also, young girls and children and other, we don't know what Frank did.
Yeah, we don't know what unspeakable things he did to the other, as Andre was saying, he was calling them the copies or the products of his offspring.
Yeah,
What he could have been doing to those women on top of the women he could have been bringing into the he was bringing in, and they don't even
yeah,
touch on that. I mean, that's what I
exactly.
meant by like earlier some unanswered questions. I'm like, what happened to all these women, all that, and I'm like, you know what? I don't need to know, and it's not necessarily
Mhm.
relevant. But
He had them
right,
documented
we don't
though.
know what she saw.
Mhm. Yeah, and so she had a life full of nothing but, most likely, of nothing but abuse, and yeah. So I feel like Tess killing her, like you said, it was a mercy kill.
Yeah, yeah. So so
And yeah, like you said, she could not go back. She could not, absolutely could not go back to that
and I don't
house.
blame her. Yeah.
No. And I'm glad that
I
Tess
hate to
finally
say it.
realized that she had no
I would have
business
done the
going
same
back.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad Tess finally at that moment realized that she had no business going back to that house.
Yeah. It was time. It was finally time to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And Frank went out like a punk. He just killed himself because I think he knew he was busted because I AJ told him like, oh, cops are gonna come, and so he was like, it's over for me. I'm not even gonna get out of here. And yeah, and
Well,
then
it's like he, at that point too, I mean, he was bedridden
mhm.
and living in filth, and I mean that room was disgusting.
Yeah, the whole situation was in the room. Yeah, and again, so many red flags. I'm like, I always wonder, like, should she have described that room better to Keith? Like, dude, there's like this mattress. It's so gross and it's filthy, and
You
this
know
is the
what
sort of
though?
setup. And this bucket, why would there be a bucket down there? Because people are
But I think
utilizing it for to do their business. So that means somebody's being kept down there. She tells him it's like a dungeon, but I think it went over his head.
I think she was so panicked. I don't think she could even bring out the words though either.
Yeah, that's
And trying to put
not.
myself in that situation, I know when I'm under a lot of stress or when I'm panicking, I have a hard time getting my words out. And I've even had to tell people, give me a second to calm down and think about what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And at that point, I would have been like, let's. let's go for a drive and let me tell let me calm down and I'll tell you about what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything versus the way it was done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have been completely panicked too. I wouldn't have I already know I wouldn't have been much different. I would have been like, oh my God, there's this. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I would have been the same way. Although I wouldn't have been down there trying to investigate either.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, there's no way to know for sure, but I'm pretty sure I would not have been down there doing
No.
half of what she was doing. But I'm glad
Nope.
too,
No
though.
thanks.
Back to AJ, that Mother does get him for what he does, because after he throws her off, and then he has the nerve that Tess is still alive, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't have a choice. Like it was you or me," and he starts to
Oh,
rationalize what he did,
why
and
he
it's like
threw her
he's
off and
yeah,
oh
and I
that
think
that
he's
that made me
rationalizing all of his
so
behaviors.
mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that made me so angry. He does nothing but make excuses for his wrongdoings.
Yeah. Like, and I was so glad that he was a jerk, because I was like, he does not deserve to be redeemed after raping the other woman. That he thinks, oh well, if I save Tess, then it's gonna right everything that I did in the past.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you just proved your true colors came out, man. You threw her off of there,
Hmm.
and you knew what you were
And
doing,
he
and
wasn't,
then you're
yeah,
still
because
making
he wasn't
excuses,
trying to kill her to help, actually help her. He was doing it just to help himself,
exactly, exactly. And so
which was
I like how Mother
disgusting.
gets his eyes and takes care and
Oh,
protects
the
him.
squish him.
Yeah, that's a really cool. That's a
The
really good
effects in
gory
that
scene.
part were pretty good too.
They
They
were.
did a really good job because that was actually a man playing Mother.
Yeah, yeah, it is a man.
And they did a really good job at the prosthetics and everything else. I thought they I was really impressed by the effects, especially being a makeup artist.
I was just gonna say,
To
yeah,
see,
you would know about the makeup part. Yeah.
yeah, to see the prosthetics, the way they put it together, the teeth, the
Mhm.
I really liked the way like Keith's head looked when it was bashing into the wall. It was
Mhm.
disgusting, but just to see how, you could see it gradually,
It's
his
like
skull
exposed, I guess, right?
gradually
Yeah.
going, yeah, oozing and
Yeah, there you go,
smushing.
losing. They did a
And
good
then
job
like
with her
that,
hair too. Like it made you like kind of grossed out by her. You're like, and even though she looks
yeah,
all gross and ugly, again, you still had um you had empathy for her
compassion
at
for
the
her at
end.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
You-
Even though she was this
yeah,
grotesque looking thing, you were still like, oh, I feel bad for her though.
yeah,
Like
I
what is she
felt terrible
doing?
for her. Like I said, by the end of the movie, like toward when Tess had to finally kill her, I was just like when she I think a lot when she saved Tess and
Mm-hmm.
you see Tess is on top of her and you see her arms are around her, so you know that she purposely rolled in order to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that Tess wouldn't have been hurt.
Yeah. It was her motherly instincts.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely
crazy because I don't think they
100%.
ever call her mother, but they call her mother in the credits. They call her
Yeah.
mother, but they don't ever actually call her mother. But that was all she knew from those videos, that she wanted to, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
have a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the closest thing she had or knew. So she was very nurturing. She tried to be.
Yeah, in her own way, she definitely was trying to be nurturing. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think she's the
Yeah, even
barbarian.
when she booped I remember even in the beginning when she booped AJ's nose
Mm-hmm. I
when
know.
trying and then by
My little
breastfeeding
one
him.
does that to me, and I thought of that when I was watching it. Yeah, it's such a childlike thing to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
he'll
Well,
look, I'm Buku
but
Mama.
remember it was all that she'd watched it on the video.
Mm-hmm. That Frank had playing for her from that he got when he got the baby
Yeah.
supplies. So yeah, it makes sense that
Yeah, that the lady at the store gave him.
yeah, and it makes sense that it's I don't there's no proof to this, but I'm sure that motherly instinct was in her, and that video brought it out more. And then
Yeah,
finally having Tess around, it really brought it into her life.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so Barbarian,
Absolutely.
I think it's a really good flick, guys. You guys watch it. If you listen to this whole
Yeah.
thing, it's not going to make sense. You really need to see it to enjoy what we're talking about, to go with it, and to put some
It's a
thought into
fantastic.
it.
I thought it was really well done and No, guys, we're not man haters. We love men.
No, no. There's some great men out there. It's
Oh,
like
there's
anything.
amazing
There's
men out
bad
there.
there's bad there's bad people who can paint a whole group and a negativity in it.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there are bad men out there, and we have to be women that have to look out for ourselves. And that's not to say nothing bad can
Mhm.
happen to a man.
And the thing
Everybody,
that's
unfortunately, has to
sad
look out for their
is
well being.
absolutely, and the thing that's sad is, and I'm just putting myself out there. I'll be a little vulnerable for a minute, but
Go ahead.
the men that have hurt me were men that I knew or that I had, kind of like a what I thought would be a bond with,
Mm-hmm.
and were seemingly good guys and did the quote unquote right things until they didn't.
Yeah. No, I.
And so yeah. And so I think that's why my guard was up as high as it was with Keith, especially considering she didn't know this guy.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the main barbarian, but there were things that he still did to dismiss her and dismiss her fears. And yeah,
No,
I
I
think he could have done things differently.
absolutely. I mean, I give him in hindsight, I give him the benefit of the doubt. He was woken up in the middle of the night and he wasn't expected to be in this situation. But initially, we don't know any of that. And
Hmm.
I have to agree with you. And if we come off as men haters, then so be it. Because again, I'm not
Yeah,
saying that all men are
we
bad,
gotta
but
save our lives.
I've worked I was in the military and I was around a lot of men, and
Mhm.
I'll probably catch some heat for this. And if I lose some listeners, so be it. I mean, I'm gonna be
Yeah,
me, but
and I've always been in
there's some bad
male-dominated
people.
fields
There's some bad
myself.
guys out there, and there's some good ones. But there you got to watch
Mhm.
out because sometimes those bad ones they'll be good for a
Yeah,
while.
and like I said in the beginning of our interview, Ted Bundy was good-looking and charming.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah. And he's one of the most notorious killers out there that's been out there.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
ever.
Wow. So the title, what's funny, and then a little tidbit of information before we close up our conversation. Again, it was also I think in the interview that you sent me, and then reading, doing some background
Mhm.
research that the name Barbarian when Zach Krager wrote this, he didn't even like choose that name for anything other than he just needed to name it something in his computer. He said, "Well, I don't want it to be
Mhm.
called Untitled Document," so he named it Barbarian. And then everybody else came out with ideas. They said, "Oh, it's because the address of the house 776. That's when the barbarians took down the Romans," or it's an anagram for Airbnb. And he was like, "No, I just named it that, and then I just kind of liked it and stuck with it." So now I guess the way I've interpreted, and it sounds like you have too. We're trying to figure out who the barbarians are, and it's pretty obvious that
Yeah.
who the
Yeah,
two
because I
main
almost feel like he
barbarians
may
are.
have named it Barbarian because a barbarian wouldn't that have been like the brutalizer?
Well, and yeah,
Oh
I think
no.
of like Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah. I have to look up what Merriam-Webster says. What does Webster say? Hey Siri,
Yeah.
what does Webster say about? Oh, she's listening to me. What?
Oh, your
Yeah,
device is listening. Yeah, be careful.
yeah.
But I
Hey
definitely wondered
Siri,
what.
what is the definition of barbarian? Oh, in ancient times, a member of a community or tribe not belonging to one of the great civilizations.
Hmm. Okay.
Well, I
That's not
guess you
quite what
can
I thought.
say that Frank didn't really belong to the civilization. He was kind of like,
That's true. What he was doing was
although
not normal behavior that we expect in our
although
society.
mother was also not of the community. So
Yeah,
maybe
that's
mother was the
also
barbarian
it's also a good point.
because she hadn't been socialized.
Yeah.
So who
So
knows?
maybe
Maybe
he
mother was the
subconsciously
barbarian.
chose the name in, you know, was crafting the
Hey,
characters
it
to match
worked.
the name. Yeah. Like you said, he wasn't something he
Either or
planned. He's
maybe
still
he
like, I don't
kept
know,
it
it was
to
just a
keep
cool
it.
sounding name.
Either he could have kept it just to keep the mystery of the movie though too, because upon watching it, I wouldn't have thought thinking of the word barbarian, I wasn't going into it expecting anything of what it was. Although
Exactly.
I wasn't expecting anything from what it was.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I said, we kind of just watched it on a whim, and I was like, and I'd heard about it, but I didn't know anything about it, and that's kind of a practice I've actually adopted now with a lot of
Hmm.
movies. With new movies, I kind of, if I watch a trailer, I don't watch it more than once because I want to like be
Yeah.
surprised. But
Oh,
I
you should
definitely
see
didn't
me at
know
movie
anything.
theaters. I'm like this at the movie theaters.
You're
Trailers.
scared, yeah, yeah. So I
Well, not
didn't
because
know.
I'm
I
scared,
didn't know what it
because
was going to be about.
I don't want to spoil anything if we watch it later.
Yeah, that's true. You have to
Because
be
like,
careful of that.
yeah, because there's been a couple of movies where I'm like, oh man, I wish I didn't know that going into this movie.
Yeah. Well, before
Yeah.
we head out, so tell us one more time about where people can find you, and again where they can find
Yeah,
Final Girls,
so
because that's why you're avoiding so many horror movies.
yeah, so you can look us up on YouTube. It's Final Girlz, GIRLZ. That's on YouTube. On Instagram, we are Final Girls underscore Final Girls underscore horror. Or you can look at me. I'm Stephos, STEPHOHS. On That's my handle on Instagram, and
Yeah,
you'll
check.
see a lot of my modeling and a lot of my modeling. Every once in a while, I might throw some videos up of me singing, I also put a lot of stuff up from. Sometimes I'll put up because we do skits for our channel too before for each movie that we do, and so every once in a while, with a movie that's been out for a while, I'll sometimes throw a skit up on my page
Yeah. So yeah, check
too.
out our
So
Instagram. Really, you do some really cool work with your makeup. Your modeling's really
thank you,
unique. Um,
thank
so
you,
I recommend people go watch the YouTube channel and check out Steph's Instagram. And
thank
thank you
you,
again, Stephanie. I'm really glad you came on the
thank
podcast. It was really
you.
cool to chat with you. You brought some new perspective to the movie
Likewise.
for me. Uh, it's
Thank you
that
for
kind of movie.
having me,
The
and
more
thank
you
you.
watch it, the more you catch.
And I absolutely caught more these last couple times, especially like I said with the screaming and the just go back to the opening scene,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
it's chilling. I was just like, oh my God, because I almost feel like it was like the haunting of all the women that had been murdered there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to rewatch that part to catch it.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, even if you don't watch the whole thing, it's just like I said, it's literally right there in the opening before, just as she turns the car off.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll check that out. All
Yeah.
right, guys. Well, again, thank you to Stephanie, and I hope everybody
Thank
enjoyed this
you.
episode. Um, if you liked what you heard, check us out on other episodes. You can check out our website, dreadfuldialogue.com. We're also on Instagram at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast, and we look forward to you guys checking out more episodes. And again, follow Stephanie, and that's it for today. So thank you guys for listening, and have a good one.
Thank you.